This lesson provides an overview of PowerShell Desired State Configuration, or DSC. When PowerShell was first envisioned back in the Monad days, there was always a planned set of features it would offer. We can see when we look at PowerShell version 3 that was part of Windows Server 2012, every aspect of the operating system can now be configured using PowerShell. And in fact, there are many things that can only be configured using PowerShell that aren't available in the graphical interface. However, when we look at a server's full life cycle, there's development, there's testing, there's pre-production, there's production, there's scaling. And when we deploy operating systems and deploy applications, there's a number of different actions I need to take. That might be installing roles or features. So for example, through Server Manager, I can add roles or features. I may need to copy files, copy folders, take a source folder and copy it to a target. I may need to write logs. I may need to configure services or processes. I may need to change the registry. There's a whole set of actions I need to take to deploy an application, a service, a complete operating system environment. Now, there are a number of ways to achieve aspects of that. I can use group policy. I can use scripting, but group policy enforces a certain set of predominantly registry-based actions and they cannot be changed. Scripting is really a configure once and doesn't keep it maintained. There's always this concept of defining a configuration, but then some drift occurs. Changes are made to the operating system that I may want to be alerted to, or maybe even remediate. Applications such as System Center Configuration Manager have the concept of configuration items, which are grouped together into configuration baselines that can then be applied to operating systems and in fact complete environments. But that's part of System Center. PowerShell Desired State Configuration completes that initial vision by giving you the full management of the deployment lifecycle of an environment. So this means I can define what an operating system and application deployment should look like completely using PowerShell syntax and then apply that to an operating system environment. So this gives me the full initial configuration, but it would also continually monitor the operating system. And then at these periodic intervals, it will actually check, is that configuration still applied? If there is some drift, it can notify me and even remediate the drift that has occurred. So you can think of this as the goal in the Star Trek days, that I can define a configuration and then in the words of Jean-Luc Picard, make it so. PowerShell Desired State Configuration would then apply and maintain that configuration. And when we think of this, there's really three phases to this environment. The first is the authoring phase. So in the authoring phase, I define what my configuration looks like. And I'm going to walk through these in later lessons. Then there's a staging phase where this new configuration is brought into a staging mode within the operating system. And there are two different ways this can work. There is a pull model, and in the pull model, I define a server, a desired state configuration server, that is really an IIS endpoint, kind of like a website, that stores these desired state configuration data configurations and modules, and then are pulled down periodically by the target machines. The other option is a push model, where I basically deploy my configurations to a server. If I do wish to use the pull model, I really just create the pull server. So in Add Roles and Features, I see under, I just select a random server here, it doesn't matter, but under my features, I will see my Windows PowerShell, and then we see Windows PowerShell Desired State Configuration. When this is enabled, this creates that IIS endpoint into which I then place my desired state configuration configurations and modules, and then I configure the URI, basically the web address, to all the servers that will then go and poll this periodically. So it really is that simple to get that up and running. So that's the push or the pull mode. So we've had the authoring phase, the staging phase, and there's the make it so phase. This is where the configuration I applied is pulled into the local configuration store, it's parsed, dispatched, and then actually implemented on the machine. The goal of PowerShell Desired State Configuration is simply to enable me to define what an environment should look like. That desired state is then applied to the operating system, but then it's actually maintained and kept in place on that environment. Even if someone changes something, if they modify a file, if they modify a registry, if they delete something, it will be put back automatically as part of that desired state configuration.